Welcome to the Multifamily Collective. It is that time of the week again where we bring an interview to you from some interesting individuals in the multifamily space. So, as is tradition, grab your favorite beverage, grab a notepad, grab some writing utensils, and get ready because you're going to get a lot of value out of this episode. By way of introduction, Kerry Kirby is a renowned entrepreneur, technology innovator, and a philanthropist. He is the founder and CEO of 365 Connect, the leader in providing the most advanced automated marketing, leasing, and resident engagement platform for the multifamily communities across the globe. Executing on a progressive vision of creating leading edge products and services, Kerry has won more technology awards than any other company in his home state of Louisiana, as well as the industry he serves. Prior to founding 365 Connect, Kerry developed multifamily housing communities across the southeastern United States. His eye for finding buildable sites with incredible locations was his formula to create an array of successful ventures. Kerry has earned widespread recognition in numerous prestigious awards throughout his career. His accolades include the Louisiana Governor's Technology Award and Titan Entrepreneur Award, both highlighting his outstanding contributions to the tech industry. For 9 consecutive years, he has been listed on the Silicon Bayou 100 as one of Louisiana's most influential entrepreneurs. Most notably, Kerry became the first in the multifamily housing sector to receive the Bootstrapper Award, underscoring his remarkable journey of turning a scrappy startup into a leading prop tech powerhouse without external funding. As an acclaimed speaker and award-winning podcaster, Kerry has reached millions of listeners, having appeared across various media outlets, streaming services, and event stages to discuss the convergence of technology in our digitally dependent world. He has appeared on the BBC Digital Planet, BBC Podcast Network, NPR News, CBS's Digital Gumbo segment, an array of global media publications. Kerry is the co-host of the longest-running podcast in multifamily housing industry, the award-winning Multifamily Biz, plus powerhouse webcast series, as well as the popular Tech Talk series, Multifamily Tech Gurus. I can tell you, I've been listening to the Power Hour webcast dating back to I believe the late 90s, early 2000s, plus minus. It is the longest running podcast ever. Kerry W. Kirby serves on the board of advisors of Rainbow, a national nonprofit organization that provides service-enriched housing programs for over 32,000 affordable housing units across the country and general partner services to an additional 12,300 units. He is the chair of technology initiatives for the Multifamily Innovation Advisory Council, an executive membership level organization with over 3 million multifamily units represented, focusing on assisting owners and operators explore innovative solutions that will drive change across the industry. And there's more. Kerry and his wife, Melinda, are actively involved in supporting communities and causes with an unwavering dedication to humanitarian, educational, healthcare, and equality programs. Through the Kerry and Melinda Kirby Foundation, they provide resources to nonprofit organizations that accelerate progress by championing causes that give a voice to those that are often not heard. They have been highly recognized for their philanthropic commitment, being honored with a Humanitas International Award for their significant impact in making a difference in people's lives. Kerry and Melinda reside in the suburban New Orleans area with their 2 daughters and family dogs, Angel and Roxy. And we have a second guest this week, Jimmy Lancaster, who is the Chief Product Officer at 365 Connect. Jimmy Lancaster is one of the most well-known software engineering experts on the Silicon Bayou. He specializes in building high-performance teams that deliver results and exceed expectations. Jimmy uses his technology and communication skills to define success for customers while motivating teams to create leading-edge products that make a difference for its end users. With a career spanning over a decade in the software industry and a degree in computer science from Southeastern Louisiana University, Jimmy brings the perfect blend of technical knowledge and business expertise to the table. In his role as Chief Product Officer at 365 Connect, Jimmy leads the development team to continually evolve the company's platform and services. He is responsible for formulating strategies for new products, architecting complex integrations, and monetizing emerging technologies. With an unwavering dedication to solving problems, Jimmy interfaces with customers to meet their needs of simplifying operations through delivering innovative solutions. Jimmy and his wife, Tricia, reside in the greater New Orleans area, along with their newborn son, James. They are actively involved in providing scholarships for high school students in Tricia's hometown of Angeles City, Philippines, when Jimmy is not creating the next big thing in technology. He pursues his passion for race cars and can often be found clocking time on the track. Now, this conversation went an hour and 40 minutes. So we're going to break it up into two different segments, and we'll post them 1 week at a time. But it was, dare I say, wide-ranging. We talked about everything multifamily. There was a through line of multifamily, through line of prop tech and technology that is making impact, has made impact, will continue to make impact in the multifamily space. And we just off the cuff, top of head, tip of tongue, talked about the industry and all of the things that have certainly some historical things, present day things, and things that are impacting that will have the huge, I think, positive impact on the industry on an ongoing basis. Now, as is tradition, or has become tradition with us in this multifamily space, Kerry and I have started sharing coffee tips to the extent that every time we see each other, we hand off a bag of coffee, favorite coffee that we've been drinking as of late. So Legrand Coke Rogue is a French truck coffee. I'm actually drinking it today for this episode. So this is my drink of the day. This is the one I will be publicizing when I post this video out. But I hope you enjoy. This is a long conversation, but there are some incredible nuggets in here just simply because of Jimmy and Kerry's experience in the business over a very long bit of time and the innovative solutions that they built for the industry over a long bit of time. Hope you enjoy. Kerry, Jimmy, welcome to the show.
Mike, excited to be here.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, totally. I gotta tell you guys, I feel like this podcast has been like 5 years in the making. This conversation, this interview has been 5 years in the making. We've certainly engaged and interacted in person at different conferences across the years. We maybe even toyed around with the idea of doing a podcast someday, but here we are. I'm excited about this.
I think this one happened because we were actually at a conference last week together, and you said, let's just book it right now. We keep talking about that, and that's how we ended up here.
That's right. You said it's your New Year's resolution or something that you're going to just book on the spot, like take action now. I like that. I need that.
That's right. I think I shared with you, Jimmy, that I was inspired by somebody who had a watch. I think it was Peter Diamandis. You guys probably know who he is. Peter Diamandis one year put a little thing over the top of his watch that said now. And so every time he would look at the watch, it was like just a reminder to do things right now in the moment. And I love that. I'm inspired by that.
Yeah. What time is it now?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think you're right to lead in that this got on the calendar because we said it in the moment, and here we are today. Guys, I'm really excited coming off the conference from last week, Multifamily Innovation and AI Summit, put on by Kerry and Patrick Antrim, who I think they're just doing incredible work on the AI front. But I'm inspired because of the topic of the AI, and I know that you guys, the two of you, 21 years in business, have certainly been not dancing around the edges of AI, but certainly in my head, you've been fully immersed in it. But just kind of lead us off by telling us a little bit about what you're up to.
Yeah. So we've been building things, I guess, from forward looking at things, but maybe looking more out the industry. So I think we kind of started off into, I call it future proofing, right? So it's like, what do you do when maybe somebody doesn't show up one day, or what do you do? So it's kind of got two prongs to it in our industry. What do you do to serve somebody better online that's looking for an apartment or wants to lease it right now? How do you shorten the time frames? How do you reduce the workload on your people? And how do you future-proof yourself if, those people you depend on for some reason, I'm not here this day, or, look, we're all employers, or I'm leaving, I'm going somewhere else, and you're scrambling to get somebody to fill those shoes. So I think our entrance into kind of a three-prong approach: self-service, automation, and AI. Self-service is something our industry has done pretty well with as far as portals, and I want to apply online versus here's a sheet of paper like back in the day. Sit here and go fill all this out like you're at a doctor's office with a clipboard.
I remember those days.
Yeah. So we got into how could we do a lease, totally build an invoice and ship it for signature and collect the move-in money without a human becoming involved. So when we started down that road, Jimmy and I wanted to get some information from basically people we didn't do business with, just people that do leases at properties. And there was this thing, and we never could put our finger on it. We still can't find it. It's sad. We're looking for it. If anybody's listening, please give it to us. So we called it became the term leakage. And what leakage became was we found out there was this gap that if somebody was approved and they didn't get that lease, get them signed up quick enough, they might actually go somewhere else.
Oh, yeah.
And we still have these conversations today, and they say, yeah, it's a thing, but we don't, I think the measurement, maybe Jimmy can chime in, was that him and I talked about is maybe we look at approvals that didn't convert to a resident. Is that where you're thinking, Jimmy?
Well, it wasn't just approvals. It's, from the moment they pay that app fee, right? They go on, they apply, they pay an app fee. They immediately start losing interest, or they're getting anxious, and they're looking because it's not a done deal, right? So the moment they pay that app fee, like, the clock starts ticking. And so if you have a really long screening process, and then once they're approved, it's taken a long time to get that lease put together and sent to them, and then days go by. Yeah, what's the chances that they actually found something else? And one of the things that we look at a lot is, what do the car and what is the automotive industry doing, right? They want you to sign, they want you to drive out with that car right now, because if you leave the lot, you might get a different idea in mind.
Right.
That's right.
They won't let you walk off. There you're on a lot. You're with a human, and they're like, come in here, come in here. They don't want,
and they're relentless.
Right. Well, they know as soon as you get off the lot, they got that chance just dropped in half. So we kind of worked on that premise, and the premise was, okay, we know screening can happen like quick unless there's something weird going on in the background, but typically there's enough databases now where some of the screeners we know, they can get you an answer in 30 seconds, right?
Right. That's right.
So from that 30 seconds, we can hand you a lease in nanoseconds. As soon as we say, hey, they're approved, which means they're good, there's no contingencies here, give them a lease. And so we built something, and I think it took us a couple of years actually, Mike, because when we tackled this thing, we said, what elephant do we want to eat today? And we said, let's go on people that run on Blue Moon, which is an NAA click and lease program. They serve 8.3 million units. It's the widest used lease in the industry. Also one of the most complex for us to build to, because it's got, what, Jim, if you count all the addendums, is it like 1,000 or something addendums?
It's an overwhelming amount.
Yeah, it's overwhelming. So the time was to build all that. So this is just pure automation, and then able to build out an invoice, etc. So we went there with it. And so there's a couple of drivers, like why would you go do that, right? Just one was some just different pieces of information. And I think the biggest piece of information from an employer perspective is we really don't have enough people in the workforce anymore to fill the jobs we have. Everybody, is hiring. We've had some economic slowdown. I haven't really seen anyone in the apartment industry not hiring, because they're always turning people, and especially on site, right? There's so many options. Now I got to show up and work at a place, and And filling out a lease is complex work.
That's right.
But we have a robot that can do that for you. And if everything's not in the little blanks it belongs in, it doesn't send it out the door, but a person might. And we obviously have some bad examples of people sending out things without all the stuff filled out.
That never happens, Kerry.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. We have someone that will remain unnamed that has 1,000 leases out there that have 0 in it for the, like, if you want to terminate this lease early, it's nothing because they forget to fill them in.
Yeah, that's yeah. Unfortunately, in a world that is not automated, you find those things out. You traditionally find those things out in one of two ways. One, somebody comes in and exercises their right opportunity to exit with 0, or you're selling the property and the buyer's doing their file audit and they're like, oh wow, you guys weren't really all that diligent on the front side. That's awesome.
Which is worse.
So Jimmy had his head in this project, which felt like it took forever. It's up and running now. So we have clients using it, and it's pretty awesome, I got to tell you. And the funny thing, Mike, is people will start to use it and they'll be like, no, we got to see these things. We got to touch them. And I think we have one customer, Jimmy, maybe 2 weeks went by and they're like, lock the lease. Don't let anybody touch it. Let it automate. It's like, no, my people have to touch it. It's like, call you up in a panic. Don't let anybody touch the lease. Lock all the fields.
Yeah.
It's, it goes to that point of, I've heard it referred to as sort of sacred cow business practices. And every company is sort of exposed to these things because whatever it is, whatever the cause is, it's my baby. It's just always the way we've done it, which brings to mind a story of, like, you guys heard the story, not to get off on a tangent, but the Christmas ham story. Husband and wife host a Christmas party, and they're cooking ham, and the wife pulls out the ham and she chops off both ends of the ham, puts it on the tray, puts it in the oven. And he's like, why do you chop off both ends of the ham? And she said, well, I don't know. My mom did that. Well, mom happens to be at the party. So he goes to ask mom. Mom says, I don't know. I chop off both ends of the ham because my mom. Well, grandma happens to be at the party as well. Grandma says, after a laugh, my pan was too small. I had to lop off both ends of the ham in order for it to fit. It lives on for generations, not only in life, but in your company. These things hang around forever.
Absolutely.
But
I think every company.
I'd never heard that one, but now it's going in the arsenal of examples. I don't know. My pan was too short.
Not again to get long way, but I heard another version of that where the oven, like, remember, like way back when ovens were only this wide, not 30 or whatever they are today. Right. It's like my oven was too small, so I had to lop off the ends of the oven. But Jimmy, I'm interested so Kerry paints this incredible picture, like look, we love humans. Humans will always be around. Humans will be upskilled, reskilled, repurposed in our organizations. Kerry paints a beautiful picture of that. I have to imagine on the backside, there's a technical piece of this that, like, you sort of get Kerry's vision of what that looks like on the front side in terms of a UI, but you on the backside, at least is the way I understand it, is you're building this thing.
That's right.
Kind of from a high level, kind of unpack that for us. What does that look like when you're hearing Kerry and then you're going?
Try not to bring in the fact that you're like, are you crazy? Leave that.
Yeah. No,
leave out the 4-letter words.
It's tough. Well, we have this thing that we always talk about. And so, now I do spend some of my time still actually, rolling my sleeves up and doing some of the coding when we develop our products. Although I do spend a lot of time, doing other things, talking to customers and whatnot. But when I'm there, I work with the team, our team of developers, and usually Kerry has this idea and he wants it simple, right? And it's like, we're going to build this feature and we're going to build this product, and it's got to be easy. It's got to be one button. And one of the things that we always talk about is the easier you make a complex thing for the end user, it just gets exponentially more difficult to build and to maintain. And, the maintaining and making sure that there aren't bugs and it has that infinite flexibility. And so a lot of times, when you start there, it's like, I don't think this is possible, right? Like, that's the first thing. So, I remember when we first talked about it, it's like, look, our goal is to be able to put, send a lease out the door. Nobody ever touches it. until after it's signed by the person that, the resident, and it's ready for counter signature. And I remember when we first started talking about it, our dev team was like, you shouldn't do this. Like that's like the initial, like, I don't want to do this. This is going to be really difficult. There's a million moving pieces here, and we have to make sure that they all line up into place perfectly before a lease goes out the door. But what's great about it, but that's one reason Kerry said we spent a lot of time building this, because the simpler we make a complex thing for you, the more difficult it is on us. But I like the challenges, so that's perfectly fine by me.
I have to ask you, I can't help myself. When a developer, or sorry, I guess in this case, an engineer, maybe developer, that's terminology you might understand. I don't necessarily understand, but when somebody says no, impossible, are you even more inspired to like do it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, not everybody is, but I am.
I am.
Yeah, well,
Kerry, I have to ask you, I've heard this concept before. I think I read it in Elon Musk's, I can't remember who wrote the book. It's the latest book written about him, where the guy was embedded with him the entire time, like 2 years, and then he wrote the book. I love the author. I love him so much I forgot his name. But he speaks about this concept where Elon got very frustrated that at Tesla, engineers and let's call it business people, right? Business people have these concepts, these philosophies, these ideas, but then somebody has to translate that into like engineer speak. How important in your world is it for vision guy to set next to a desk right next to, right? Because what Elon got frustrated, he got so frustrated, he put the engineer right next to the biz dev guy down on the floor, the factory floor, right? Put their desks right next to each other and force them to talk. And there's an obvious answer to this question, but how important do you think that synergy is? Because engineers don't speak like business people. Traditionally, they don't.
Yeah.
There's got to be a conduit there.
It's Jimmy's my conduit, actually, because he'll be like, you're crazy. And it's like, come on, let's walk through this. And we have this, when we built out our office, which, we still come to, we have these 3 glass.
You're the one.
Yeah, I'm in here now with all the sun coming at me. I showed Mike the windows to my office. Like, oh my God, look at that.
yeah.
It looks like Darth Vader ship, and it's on the top floor of a high rise. So it's pretty cool. So we have 3 panes of glass built into a wall, and we had them white, the white stuff put in the back of them. So we just start kind of drawing and mapping out things. And then I call the development team the beehive. And then I'm like, Jimmy, take this back to the beehive and see how many times you get stung.
Yeah.
And
That's
then
a great analogy. I love
he's
that.
able to translate to them, and then they tell him he's crazy and
That's when I say, okay, well, I'll just do it myself. But if I do it myself, you're not going to like it. So, and then I just go ahead and do it. Yeah, that's the difference. That's the luxury we have, is that I have the ability to actually produce those things. So it's like, I'm going to give it to you my way, or you can go ahead and just do it, and then you can do it your way.
Right.
So do you feel like sometimes that pride of authorship or sort of ego, you're sort of leveraging pride of authorship or ego into the
There's
equation?
a little bit of that, and I think part of it is like when you build software, they, at the highest level, they call that architecting software, right? And a lot of times that architecture and that very high level, ideas of like how things will work or how things connect together at a big picture level, that architecture can really go in lots of different directions. And there's lots of right ways. There's lots of wrong ways also, but there's lots of ways to accomplish something. And so a lot of times if if we have somebody that, our CTO is in charge of the architecture of our product. And sometimes, we don't necessarily agree on what route to take. And so it's like, we can do it my way, or you can go ahead and just, figure it out and stop complaining about it and go do it. So we use that as leverage to get things moving.
I saw a thing on TV the other day, and they were talking about, they have all these STEM programs, and they were talking about the STEM program for kids. And they said, we let, when kids come, we let them know, hey, engineering's a superpower. And Jimmy's an engineer, a degreed engineer, computer science. So he has a superpower to go back and put on the development team that, whereas me, they're just going to be like, you're crazy, But
You're crazy. You don't.
they'll sit there and pick at me with every reason they can't be done. But Jimmy has a superpower and goes, no, that's not true. I can do it.
That's right.
You have a built-in retort mechanism, right? Like,
with great power comes great responsibility.
exactly right. Kerry, I want to back up just a second. I heard you say there were sort of three premises: self-serve, automation, and I think I missed the last or the third, AI. Can you just, for my own curiosity, when I think of automation and I think of AI, my brain kind of goes, those are one and the same.
Right.
But my logical self says those are probably not one and the same. Can you kind of define each of those terms?
Yeah. So just like the lease is automation, and I'll just give you something to relate to. Mm-hmm. So, we've all seen videos or whatever, and you'll have a car being built going down the plant. You see a little robotic arm coming, it welds something, and it goes to the next one and the next one. That is industrial automation. So that robot's trained that you weld this thing on this car right here, and that's what you do. And it's automated to do that and to put that thing. So if we go to a lease, that lease, if you've ever dealt with a Blue Moon lease, you get enough addendums, that thing can be 50 or 60 pages, right?
That's right.
So that thing has to know, oh, it's Jimmy. Oh, wait, Jimmy's got a pet. So here's a pet addendum. Now he wants a garage. Here's a garage addendum. So it has to know all these things, but it's more or less saying, here comes this car, weld this spot, here's the other piece of the car, weld that spot. So think of it, addendum. The lease is the car. Now we're adding things to it. And now we have some blanks to fill in. So we build it all out, and that's automation. AI is more machine learning is what it is. So we're training, even though automation and maybe the similarities are, well, automation, we trained it to put all these things and fill out all these blanks. And if this happens, go grab this. Whereas AI has the ability to create things. Like I think the most glaring example is generative AI, like a chat GPT. And you're like, hey, write me people are writing songs on it. Write me a song, about whatever, and it's like, sure. And it's just giving you stuff, right? So it's somewhat doing some thinking, right? And then so you have to prompt it and tell it, well, it's a song, it's rock and roll or whatever you want, to get out what you want from it. So that's more machine learning and prompting, which, by the way, has created another industry when we talk about jobs, which are prompt engineers. So there's a whole thing on how well you're able to prompt something to get a result out of it. So I think we do a couple of things with AI now, and people think AI is just got to be this big complex thing that's going to change everything they do. But in multifamily, the way we attack it is we look at a process, right? And we look at what we call commonalities. So, and I'll let Jimmy chime in on this because he's more the, engineering mind of how some of this goes down. But we took some things like, I want to answer reviews, right? So then we took AI, we built some great prompts around it, and then we said, here's 1,000 bad reviews, which, by the way, Mike, were real easy to find. It was the good ones we had trouble feeding it.
You guys are full of great jokes today. That's amazing.
They need to go outside of industry for that.
Here's 1,000 bad reviews, and then we train it. We had one with kind of funny, and it said somebody was complaining about parking. So our first iteration on AI, it said, "Oh, we apologize about the parking. We're working on fixing that." And we're like, "No, you're not." What are you going to go build a high-rise parking structure? AI? What's wrong with you? Yeah. So Jimmy's like, okay, let's So we go set some more prompts in it. Don't commit to anything. Always use empathy in your answer.
Yeah.
So,
Which is exactly how developers respond to Kerry's feature requests, by the way.
right,
Commit to nothing.
right. Yeah, like they'll tell me, yeah, we'll be done Friday. And then Friday comes and I'm like, where is it? And they'll tell me, well, we didn't say which Friday. And I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah.
what is this?
Yeah.
I'm being like punked on NTV or something. What do you mean it was? We didn't say what Friday it was. And you got a calendar. What Friday is it then?
Yeah, exactly.
So,
I have one of those people in my family. They're very literal. And if you don't give them the details, they're very, very good at doing exactly that.
yeah. So, Jimmy, walk through a little bit. Like, we've built a couple of things, but let's just talk about reviews for a minute because everybody's got
Yeah.
reviews. So tell us, bring it into us from an engineering mindset.
Well, the funny thing about AI is, at the end of the day, I almost hate calling it AI because it's really not artificial intelligence. It's more like the illusion of artificial intelligence, right? So like, take for instance, responding to reviews. When we were building that out, all AI or something like ChatGPT is doing is they're looking at how millions of people have responded to reviews in the past. And then it's looking at your situation and saying, well, based on everything we've ever seen, this is more or less how somebody would respond to this, right? And in the past, most people promise that they're going to fix whatever the problem was, right? And so that's how we think you should respond to this type of stuff. And so AI can just, if the vast majority of the world responded to reviews in a way that they shouldn't respond to reviews, AI or ChatGPT would also want to do that, right? So it's all it can really do is mimic the types of things that it's seen. And so yeah, but what's great about it is you can explain to it and it can interpret that explanation and then apply that to its logic going forward. And so through that process, we really were able to fine tune it and be able to, to direct it in such a way that it's able to take what it's seen, apply the directions we've given it, and put together what we think is the most reasonable response you should for our industry.
I think you hit on something there. I think in the early innings, I would love to just sort of give not pure definition, but maybe real, maybe a little more technical examples of this. But so in the early innings of ChatGPT, no one knew that, or maybe you couldn't go in the playground and actually architect these prompts, right? You could say you're a world-class agent of doom and then list all these other things that are sort of parameters of how I want you to answer this question when I actually do put in a short prompt. Can you sort of articulate that from an engineer's perspective for somebody that might be playing with ChatGPT but doesn't understand like the real power of what you can do on the backside?
And I honestly don't know if I feel like I am the most experienced, AI leverager out there. Although
We're
I
all
don't know
making it
who
up.
is.
Yeah,
You know,
that's right.
I
That's
don't
right.
I don't even know if the creators of it really know what everything it can and can't do. At least it feels that way. Um, but what it effectively does is, anything you describe, it's able to take that type, whatever your description is, and it's able to correlate that to other things that it's seen. And at the end of the day, it's basically indexing the World Wide Web just like Google does, but it's able to correlate the data in such a way that it can interpret your explanations and then apply the I would I wouldn't even say logic, but more like the commonalities that it sees in those things. And so that's where it's really interesting. And I think when you leverage AI for the right use cases, it makes a lot of sense.
In a way, it's sort of a probability, sort of the probability that somebody would respond this way is very high. Therefore, this is the word that comes next or the
That's
action.
right. Yes, that's more or less what it's doing.
The more you can give to it in your prompt, like, you know, don't commit, always answer with empathy. You'll get a better result out of it. It's like, I might use it like I write something. I'm like, I feel like it's choppy. I want it smoother, right? So I might copy the whole paragraph I just wrote and said, hey, make this flow better. It needs to be smoother and more powerful of a statement. And then I might do it a couple of times, and I assemble things out of it, and I build one. I like build Frankenstein out of 3 different prompts I gave it, and I'm like, well, I like that line, but not this one. And so I think everybody uses it a little different. Obviously, in automation or an automation environment where we're going to use it, that we just pulled this review from Google. It's good. That's pretty easy. Let's thank them. Well, this one's bad, right? So we need to answer it. Sorry you had that experience. So that's where the real training part comes in, and you're always looking at it and perfecting it. And then there's things that so we've built, what, Jimmy, 3 things so far. We did that. We've got an SEO piece we built, and then we've got the unit rev piece, what we'll talk about. But bringing it to another example is SEO. So, which is a whole nother topic that we probably need another podcast for, Mike. But most people think SEO, and I have a saying that SEO stands for snake engineered.
I like that. I was thinking black hat, but I like your thing better.
People have all these interpretations of things that make no sense.
That's right.
They'll go read Google, and it's like somebody told us DX index, like unindex all these pages out of Google one day, like 50 of them. And it's like, have you lost your mind? What? And then, well, yeah, Google just released this update, and it's like, did you go read the update notes? Like, I wrote this thing, and I think we've never heard from this person again that a company hired to do SEO for them. Maybe they got rid of them. I don't know. But the thing about it is, the real thing with SEO, if you read anything that makes sense, or if you go just read Google, they actually tell you what to do. It's content. So think of it as a media site. If I quit publishing paid, I'm going to drop down in the search engine. I don't have anything new for Google to come crawl. So Google has crawlers. They want new content. So years ago, we got into, let's create content. So we built, like, it's almost like a blogging platform, but we use it for SEO. So it's lifestyle content, relevant to apartment communities. And then as time went on, we actually kept building a machine underneath it internally, that it would distribute it, would know, well, that piece went here, don't use it somewhere else. So then we started using versioning and say, well, flip everything, change the title, do this, do that. And we really started playing with Google. So Google, by the way, titles make a difference. If you just flip a title, it'll pick it up because it reads the title. A lot of people think, oh, it's all duplicate content. Google actually lives on duplicate content because it ties a relevant piece to it. So then Jimmy had this idea, well, there's AI now, and then let's spin keywords into this content using AI. So Jimmy, I'll let you tell them about this monster you built.
Well, and to go back a little bit in the discussion between, like, what's the difference between automation and leveraging AI, such as, like, I keep saying ChatGPT. That's the household name, right? So, but automation is great for things that need to be exact. Like, a lease needs to be exact. Like, 2 + 2 has to equal 4. It can't accidentally equal 5 because ChatGPT saw some wrong information somewhere, and at this moment it thought it was
Got
5.
it on the internet.
Read it on the
Yeah.
internet. Yeah, it's, I always think of that commercial, the guy that on the internet that said he's a French model, and he walks up and he's obviously not a model. Well, ChatGPT is kind of like that, right? If everybody on the internet said that guy was a French model, ChatGPT would also tell you he's a French model. And so things that, like the lease, that's automation. You don't want ChatGPT to take its best guess at trying to assemble that lease, right? Because it has a potential to be wrong based on the billions of things it's seen out in the world.
Mhm.
But when it comes to things like creating unique content for your websites and SEO, there's, that's what it's really good at, because it's able to convey these unique messages. There is no right or wrong answer on the title for your blog, right?
Yeah.
But what's better is if it's unique. Well, ChatGPT, that is what it's great at, because it's not an exact science, right? And so what we found is, first of all, we do believe that, or I believe that at some point, Google's going to have to, you know, run tests and say, okay, all this content was generated using something, using AI, because they're just
Yeah.
going to be flooded with way too much data to index every piece of AI content that's ever come out. But I think what you will definitely be able to get away with is having content that's been modified or slightly enhanced using AI, which is the route we go to incorporate keyword logic, so that we make sure that all the content is staying on topic for these communities, and ultimately pointing to our main landing pages for these keywords, and reinforcing the idea that this is a place for somebody to live. So when they type in apartments in whatever, homes for rent in whatever, it's all the content focuses around and rallies against those kind of keywords. And so something like using AI to automate that and incorporate those things is just beautiful. It's just exactly what it's meant.
Yeah, that that makes a lot of sense. Just for my own curiosity, I've seen two different takes on this, the duplication of information in the Google environment. I heard that, like, don't duplicate your content, even to the extent you don't put it out on different platforms. Like, say I post to a forum and then I also post to my blog, but it's the exact same content. That's a no-no. I've also
Mhm.
read that it doesn't matter. You can post it both places, even though it's the same. I'm just interested for my own sake.
It's a lot like, it's like different opinions, right? So if you talk to several different SEO people, they're going to all give you several different answers. And all of them are getting those from the blogs they read, right? Nobody can say for certain, right? So it's like all the information that I read, the information I know, the podcasts that I listen to, all these people say this thing. And it's like, yeah, but none of you wrote the algorithm, right? None of you can really say for certain what's going on. All you can do is take in the information that other people give you, and then come to your own opinion off of that, right? And so, we had the same kind of, or at least I did, I had the same kind of dilemma, because we've had people challenge us in what we do. And I said, well, I don't agree with them, first of all, but what if they were right? And like, how can I know? Because at the end of the day, a lot of us are comparing apples to oranges. It's like, so how can I compare apples to apples? And so what we ended up doing to really validate that, this is okay, is let's go look at highly competitive markets and highly competitive keywords. Like we have lots of communities in San Antonio, and there's thousands of apartment complexes in San Antonio. And it's like, well, all the ones that rank the highest, like if you type in apartments in San Antonio, right, which is probably one of the highest coveted keyword phrases in our industry, if you have an
So
apartment,
the first page of it, it's very tough.
right? So all
That's
the
right.
all the communities on our platform that show up, first, they all do it. They all have the blogging, and then later, pages, hundreds of results later are the ones that aren't doing it. And so it's like, you know, we actually can compare apples to apples, and it's like the results just kind of spoke
Yeah.
for themselves. If you're doing this, you are going to rank better. We know, because we're comparing very similar things that, you know, we have sites that want to rank for these same things. And so I
Yeah.
think I think you can do it, but there are some differences. We talked about one, those title tags, which are generally going to be in what they call like an H1 tag, or a header, your primary header tag.
Right.
By having unique titles, that'll do more for you than anything. So if you can at least just make that one piece unique, you will immediately trick the search engines. So
The other thing, like we got into doing this, and we'll leave you on this part, and we'll jump to another thing we're doing with AI. But it's imagine a property site. So this is a mix of automations. It's like we have a machine with unique content that was built in house, not with AI, and it says, okay, take this piece of content, use it here, but don't use it in that market, again. And if it's used somewhere else, maybe the title is spun or the first paragraph. So that's automation, and it pairs it with a picture. So we have an automated machine, and it automatically does it. So we have a thing, and we'll do one a week. So wrap your head around this. In a year, that property site's got 52 more pages in it. 2 years, it's 100 pages. Keeps growing and growing. So for Google, it keeps coming and getting content. And then we're using AI to spend it's apartments in Houston. It's pet-friendly apartments in Houston. And it's peppering these words on all these things, but blending it in there so it makes sense. It's not crazy. So it blends it into the content, and then over time we have all these pages. So then Jimmy took and ran a script and said, okay, I want to go look at the lead flow on somebody using this part of service versus those on our platform that don't use that service, and see what the lead difference is. And then Jimmy, tell them what you found.
So yeah, the last time I looked at that, I found that these customers receive, I think it was like 40% more organic leads than those of ours that weren't doing it. And as a matter of fact, another company in our industry actually came out. They did some research and they found a statistic that it was like 50 something percent more leads. You had more than 12 landing pages. And so, there's definitely the data is out there that points to, content helps you gain a better organic ranking. And in simplest terms, the way I like to tell people is Google likes content. They want content, and they want content that tells their customer, the person in the search engine typing in a phrase, that this website has a really high probability of having exactly what you're looking for. It's in their best interest for those things to be at the top. And so you have to give them the ammo to have that confidence to put you at the top.
Yeah, that's right. It likes quantity, it likes quality, and it likes freshness, right?
Yes.
And that's exactly all the things. And then again, it's an example of something that's, when we come back in our industry, people think we're over here splitting atoms all of a sudden, because of AI. It's a mix of something that's always worked. In other industries, that's how they market, is content marketing. So we have content marketing, we have page creation, we have keyword. We're leveraging AI now to spin keywords in it. So we got to have a perfect storm that we've been able to create. So we're probably the only guys that have automated and utilized AI to create SEO.
I love that.
Uh-huh.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. I was just going to switch gears. You had sort of made a light segue just a second ago about another thing that you're working on with Rev. I think unit Rev is the way you cited that just a second ago. You guys want to unpack that? That seems really interesting, especially in the environment today.
Yeah, I think you saw a very short 5-minute thing on it in the innovation showcase that we were at last week.
That's right.
So I'll give you just kind of the high points, and then I'll let Jimmy give you the technical pieces of the puzzle. So what Unit Rev does is we have a couple of things, and we'll call them old school, right? We know what your pricing and your unit availability is, right? Because we're sucking it in and maybe displaying it on your website or syndicating it to ILS or something. So we know what that is. We also know, hey, what might be coming, what's on notice. And I always call that, there's always been a saying in the apartment industry, the shadow market. What's the shadow market? It's the houses for rent, right? So people got out of building 3-bedroom apartments like they used to, back in the day because you're now competing with houses. Your shadow market's heavier. So I use the term shadow market on notices, right? Because it's very visible, like, oh, I got 3 1-bedrooms, but you might have 5 on notice. So you really got 8, because you got 5 coming into the funnel here. So it reads that, it reads the on notice units. We're also kind of working with looking at some other data points, like, there's an array of things and I keep adding to it. So Jimmy will probably cut me off, but it's like,
Right.
what's my typical lease renewal rate? What's my eviction rate? Because that's another thing. So there's like, what causes a vacant apartment unit? It's, well, somebody moved out, somebody skipped, somebody's in eviction. So it's not just one thing, it's a multitude of things, right?
That's right.
So looks at that data and says, okay, I need to move some 1-bedrooms here. So it's an analyzer, I think is what Jimmy ended up calling it. And so it analyzes this data, and then it says, okay, we need to market 1-bedrooms. Then we're taking a combination, again, some old school things, because we know the industry, and it's like you said, we've been cutting the ends off the ham now for 3 generations. We don't have time, but we're doing it. So we need to market these things, right? So let's take the community assets, right? We got a logo, hopefully. We know properties that don't. We got some photos. We also know the amenities. So we know all the amenities you have. And then we take that and we're using AI as an assembler where it's saying, okay, I have these assets, and it's building a graphic. And it can do anything from saying, hey, 1-bedroom's available for lease, starting at whatever price they start at. Or we can even go further with it and say, hey, I want to run a special on these ones. And we can say, hey, first month free, all done with AI. Nobody touches it. Creates a nice content paragraph, a link, tracking link, because we have analytics we built with it. And then we've built integrations into things that are easier to build integrations into, like Twitter, Facebook. People give us APIs and say, here, knock your lights out, do whatever you want. So we've built integrations into everything, TikTok, and we take that and we like, boom.
Yeah.
And it automatically does it. No human, perfectly written. So we've been baited this thing out. So it's, as Jimmy said, AI is really good at writing things where it's got some leeway.
Especially marketing.
Yeah, marketing it's great at. It puts hashtags in it. So imagine that we go into Google, we can pump it in Google Posts. So what do we got, Jimmy? Like 6 different channels.
Sounds right.
And then we've got another little trigger we put in there. So, and we have tiers depending on what you want that we can, so Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, they have stories, right? And it's ephemeral content. In 24 hours, it goes away. So on 24 hours, when it goes away, here we come with another one. So we can keep a list of stories that a human can't do, right? And so it's hyper marketing, it's relevant marketing. And then we built it for what we call the in-betweens, to just market the community. It's got a pool. Tell them about the pool. It's pet friendly. It reads the amenities. Tell them it's pet friendly. Tell them to come create your next culinary experience in our chef-inspired kitchens. So we built an organic marketing machine that stays out in front of vacancies by looking at this stuff and pumping it. We have a ton of ideas that, again, we'd need, a couple of hours to get through to where we think it could be really off the hook.
When we started actually, looking into building this product, one of the things that we did was we took, I want to say it was about 250 different property management companies, and we just went and looked at their social media channels. And one of the interesting things we found is 50% of them just didn't do anything, and I don't blame them. It's not easy stuff. I'm not a social media type of person. It's a lot of work mentally for me to create a LinkedIn post, or I don't ever post on Facebook, but 50% were posting, although I don't think anybody posted regularly per se. I mean, maybe a small percentage posted regularly. But the bigger thing was that people, there wasn't really a strategy behind their posting. And so a lot of times, maybe it was a picture of the leasing staff, see leasing staff doing like TikTok videos, but like there was nothing, there was no depth to that post, right? It didn't really do anything, but you say, okay, there's people that look like they're having fun there. That's nice. And so one of the things that we did is like, why don't, if we can automate this creation of content, can we not promote the things that people need to know? Like, is there anything available? Are you running specials? And then what are the reasons I should want to live at your community? You have a pool, you're pet friendly. And then on top of that, I think a good strategy does include incorporating some things like, maybe pictures of residents or things that are going on at the community, which we obviously can't automate because we're not there with a camera. But you can't just have, just the pictures of residents or just, pictures of your leasing staff doing TikTok videos. And so, you have these social media channels. Why don't you leverage that as an opportunity to promote your availability, specials, and then amenities? And so that's kind of, where it came out. And very, very, very few management companies are doing anything like that. And it's because it's intense it takes a lot of time and effort. And a lot of these social media content gets created 4 to 6 weeks before it ever gets posted. A lot of times people create these content calendars. And so it's like, here's a calendar for the next 2 months. It's like, you don't even know what I'm going to have available. Like I might lease all these 1 bedrooms and I'm onto a problem with 2 bedrooms. Right. And
Yeah.
you don't know that because you created a content calendar 6 weeks ago.
Now, before we let you go, I want to remind you that we are going to bring you part 2 of this interview next week, simply because the podcast ran for an hour and 40 minutes plus minus. So we thought we would break this up into 2 parts. So please join us again next week when we bring you the second part of this wonderful conversation with Kerry, Kirby, and Jimmy Lancaster, both from 365 Connect. Take care.